Faithful John bade the king stay behind on the ship and wait for him. Perhaps I shall bring the princess with me, said he. Therefore see that everything is in order. Have the golden vessels set out and the whole ship decorated. Then he gathered together in his apron all kinds of golden things, went on shore and walked straight to the royal palace. When he entered the courtyard of the palace, a beautiful girl was standing there by the well with 2 golden buckets in her hand, drawing water with them. And when she was just turning round to carry away the sparkling water, she saw the stranger and asked who he was. So he answered, I am a merchant, and opened his apron and let her look in. Then she cried, Oh, what beautiful golden things, and put her pails down and looked at the golden wares one after the other. Then said the girl, the princess must see these. She has such great pleasure in golden things that she will buy all you have. She took him by the hand and led him upstairs, for she was the waiting maid. When the king's daughter saw the wares, she was quite delighted and said, They are so beautifully worked that I will buy them all from you. But faithful John said, I am only the servant of a rich merchant. The things I have here are not to be compared with those my master has in his ship. They are the most beautiful and valuable things that have ever been made in gold. When she wanted to have everything brought up to her, he said, There are so many of them that it would take a great many days to do that. And so many rooms would be required to exhibit them, that your house is not big enough. Then her curiosity and longing were still more excited, until at last she said, Conduct me to the ship. I will go there myself, and behold the treasures of your master. At this faithful John was quite delighted, and led her to the ship. And when the king saw her, he perceived that her beauty was even greater than the picture had represented it to be, and thought no other than that his heart would burst in twain. Then she boarded the ship, and the king led her within. Faithful John, however, remained with the helmsman, and ordered the ship to be pushed off, saying, Set all sail, till it fly like a bird in the air. Within, the king showed her the golden vessels, every one of them, also the wild beasts and strange animals. Many hours went by whilst she was seeing everything, and in her delight she did not observe that the ship was sailing away. After she had looked at the last, she thanked the merchant and wanted to go home. But when she came to the side of the ship, she saw that it was on the high seas far from land, and hurrying onwards with all sail set. Ah! Cried she in her alarm. I am betrayed. I am carried away and have fallen into the power of a merchant. I would rather die. The king, however, seized her hand, and said, I am not a merchant. I am a king, and of no meaner origin than you are. And if I have carried you away with subtlety, that has come to pass because of my exceeding great love for you. The first time that I looked on your portrait, I fell fainting to the ground. When the princess of the golden dwelling heard this, she was comforted, and her heart was drawn to him, so that she willingly consented to be his wife. It so happened, while they were sailing onwards over the deep sea, that faithful John, who was sitting on the forepart of the vessel, making music, saw 3 ravens in the air, which came flying towards them. At this he stopped playing and listened to what they were saying to each other, for that he well understood. One cried, Oh, there he is carrying home the princess of the golden dwelling. Yes, replied the second, but he has not got her yet. Said the third, but he has got her. She is sitting beside him in the ship. Then the first began again, and cried, What good will that do him? When they reach land, a chestnut horse will leap forward to meet him, and the prince will want to mount it. But if he does that, it will run away with him, and rise up into the air, and he will never see his maiden more. spoke the second, but is there no escape? Oh, yes. If someone else mounts it swiftly, and takes out the pistol which he will find in its holster, and shoots the horse dead, the young king is saved. But who knows that? And whosoever does know it, and tells it to him, will be turned to stone from the toe to the knee. Then said the second, I know more than that. Even if the horse be killed, the young king will still not keep his bride. When they go into the castle together, a wrought bridal garment will be lying there in a dish, and looking as if it were woven of gold and silver. It is, however, nothing but sulfur and pitch. And if he put it on, it will burn him to the very bone and marrow. Said the third, is there no escape at all? Oh, yes, replied the second. If anyone with gloves on seizes the garment and throws it into the fire and burns it, the young king will be saved. But what good will that do? Whosoever knows it and tells it to him, half his body will become stone from the knee to the heart. Then said the third, I know still more. Even if the bridal garment be burnt, the young king will still not have his bride. After the wedding, when the dancing begins and the young queen is dancing, she will suddenly turn pale and fall down as if dead. And if someone does not lift her up and draw 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spit them out again, she will die. But if anyone who knows that were to declare it, he would become stone from the crown of his head to the sole of his foot. When the ravens had spoken of this together, they flew onwards, and faithful John had well understood everything. But from that time forth he became quiet and sad. For if he concealed what he had heard from his master, the latter would be unfortunate. And if he disclosed it to him, he himself must sacrifice his life. At length, however, he said to himself, I will save my master, even if it bring destruction on myself. When therefore they came to shore, all happened as had been foretold by the ravens. And a magnificent chestnut horse sprang forward. Good, said the king, he shall carry me to my palace. And was about to mount it when faithful John got before him, jumped quickly on it, drew the pistol out of the holster, and shot the horse. Then the other attendants of the king, who were not very fond of faithful John, cried, how shameful to kill the beautiful animal that was to have carried the king to his palace. But the king said, hold your peace and leave him alone. He is my most faithful John. Who knows what good may come of this? They went into the palace, and in the hall there stood a dish, and therein lay the bridal garment looking no otherwise than as if it were made of gold and silver. The young king went towards it and was about to take hold of it. But faithful John pushed him away, seized it with gloves on, carried it quickly to the fire and burnt it. The other attendants again began to murmur, and said, behold, now he is even burning the king's bridal garment. But the young king said, who knows what good he may have done? Leave him alone. He is my most faithful John. And now the wedding was solemnized, the dance began, and the bride also took part in it. Then faithful John was watchful and looked into her face. And suddenly she turned pale and fell to the ground as if she were dead. On this he ran hastily to her, lifted her up and bore her into a chamber. Then he laid her down, and knelt and sucked the 3 drops of blood from her right breast, and spat them out. Immediately she breathed again and recovered herself. But the young king had seen this, and being ignorant why faithful John had done it, was angry and cried, throw him into a dungeon. Next morning faithful John was condemned, and led to the gallows. And when he stood on high, and was about to be executed, he said, every one who has to die is permitted before his end to make one last speech. May I too claim the right? Yes, answered the king. It shall be granted unto you. Then said faithful John, I am unjustly condemned, and have always been true to you." And he related how he had hearkened to the conversation of the ravens when on the sea, and how he had been obliged to do all these things in order to save his master. Then cried the king, "Oh, my most faithful John, pardon, pardon, bring him down." But as faithful John spoke the last word, he had fallen down lifeless and become a stone.